Oh, thanks. Coming from you.
Really.
Oh, folks, you have no idea of what an interesting editor Bob is. he is very challenging.
I think that's a euphemism for demented, but I don't know.
Here we are with a lack of sunspots, Bob and Whitley, which is tying into some of these weather patterns, which is getting close to 2012. I find all these synchronicities very strange. Whitley?
Well, I do too.
Me too.
Yeah, we were sort of touching on that earlier, and there's too much going on because not only are we looking at an increase in the number of near-Earth objects and objects just in general moving through the solar system, which was predicted by an astrophysicist and an astronomer many years ago, 30 years ago. We are also seeing changes on the surface of the Earth that as sea levels rise, as they have been doing since the last ice age and still are doing slowly, trillions and trillions of tons of water press down on the seabeds, and this is causing an increase in earthquakes and volcanism across the whole planet. Mm-hmm. We have a rift that has opened up in Ethiopia just in a matter of weeks.
The new ocean.
Yeah, well, it's not an ocean. It's not going to be an ocean for a while, but the fact that it opened that quickly is really rather remarkable. We have magnetic anomalies appearing on this planet. We've got all kinds of things going on, as we talked about, all of the things happening to the other planets, the solar system. The sun is not acting normally. And then you look at all of that incredible, enigmatic, brilliant engineering from the past. You have to ask yourself, was there somebody here who knew a lot more about the universe than we now do? Was it us, or was it someone from another world? I mean, who knows?
You know, Whitley, in your novel 2012, one scenario for a 2012 apocalypse is, of course, a visit by hostile aliens, and that is something that could be predictable right down to the day. And we know that the Maya believed in extraterrestrials, that they believed the stars in the sky were all star gods, and they believed that these gods had visited them. And one Quetzalcoatl was displaced from the heavens and came down and walked among us, and he was kind of their equivalent of Jesus Christ. And he was reincarnated as the God King Quetzalcoatl in 1,000 years ago, and was eventually driven into exile and sort of symbolically sacrificed the same way Christ was. And they believe very passionately in the existence of extraterrestrials, and that's something. If extraterrestrials had visited the Maya, and if they had told them they were going to return, that on a specific date, that's something that could have actually been predicted with great exactitude by the Maya.
You know, some years ago, back in the 90s, I wrote a book about my childhood called The Secret School. Mm-hmm. And I found in that book the most haunting paragraph. My books have got some odd things that I've never been able to explain in them, like in Nature's End, there's a car. It's set in its own future. In other words, it was written in the early 80s, and it's set in, I guess, in the 90s. And there's a car in it called the Hunyadi. A few years after the book was published, an actual car from Korea showed up called the Hyundai, which we have to this day. And I sort of wondered about that, and I wonder about this in relation to, you weren't with us at the time, Bob, when I talked about the fact that we may be involved in a galactic collision with another galaxy right now.
We are. It's a dwarf galaxy. There's a name for it, and every so often we pass through chunks of it.
Right, exactly. In any case, I said this, and this was written in 1997, I guess. And it's something that was in my mind when I was a child. Colliding galaxies were an engine of fantasies for me, and I hungered to contemplate the tragedy in first-hand light. People on a planet in colliding galaxies would be able to determine exactly when their world would end I wrote that based on memories of childhood imaginings about colliding galaxies. And now it turns out we're in one.
Yeah.
And anyone who knew that and had the capability would be able to determine very exactly when the maximum amount of friction between the two galaxies would impact our solar system.
Yeah, and the phrase astronomers use for that is that they talk about one galaxy cannibalizing another, and it's said that the dwarf galaxy, the Milky Way, is cannibalizing the dwarf galaxy.
It's called the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, by the way.
Whitley, when I was a kid, I used to worry about this. When I would hear things like the galaxies will be eaten up or that the sun would burn out in several billion years, it used to freak me out. I mean, there were some nights I couldn't get to sleep as a kid because, I'd say, Mom, the sun's going to burn out. It was almost as if it was going to happen tomorrow.
George, as you know, it gets worse that the universe comes to an end in about 20 billion years. It's called the Big Rip.
Don't tell me that.
Black, and there's no more universe.
I'll never sleep now.
Well, actually, the other thing is that the universe is literally disappearing because as the more it expands, in another 1.5 billion years, there will be very little left of the stars in the sky. It'll be mostly just dark.
A few years ago, other than from a few experts, nobody knew about 2012. We did, Whitley, you did, Bob, you did, but overall, the mass population didn't know about 2012. Now, I bet if they took a poll, a tremendous majority is probably aware of 2012, and Hollywood sure has jumped on this.
Jumped on it. Yeah, it worries me. There's already at least one guy on the Internet. I honestly forget his name. He's someone who's been connected somehow or another with the UFO field, who's announced he's going to jump off a cliff or something on December the 21st, 2012. And I have to tell you, if that kind of hysteria gets going, it's unfortunate. We've been there and done that in the past, and it's so stupid. The truth of the matter is, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It's going to be more interesting to watch than it is to jump off a cliff.
Yeah, and try to survive and make it happen.
Yeah. Right.
I'm also one of those that if they said, we think the planet's coming to an end, we need 100,000 people to get in these spaceships and go to Mars and start a new civilization, I'm staying right here, Bob and Whitley. I'm going to watch what happens and see it unfold.
Well, I'm not sure what I would do. I would be fascinated at the idea of going to another planet, but I have to admit that. But I think if something's going to happen to the Earth, it's going to happen to Mars, too. We'd have to go much farther than that. We'd have to get into another solar system altogether, and that certainly isn't going to happen in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
So, but no matter what happens, most of us are going to be here to see it. And I think, actually, it's happening now. I think we're already well into this process. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing asteroids flying past at practically nosebleed altitude every few days.
Is it possible that the Maya were simply told by ETs, around this date, you can expect one heck of a horrific catastrophe? And
they counted backwards from this date.
Yes.
I've wondered that. Because, interestingly enough, the Maya were very interested in the Pleiades. And this date is a date. There's a change in the relationship of Earth to the Pleiades that takes place, or that finishes unfolding rather, on December the 21st, 2012, and maybe that would have been a sign that we had reached a certain critical point in our transit into the Milky Way galaxy, and they knew that.
You're gonna love this, Whitley, and when I say love it in a very rhetorical sense, there is a forum set up for those who are contemplating suicide for 2012.
That is so stupid and so
unbelievable. Unbelievable. What's wrong with it?
1,000 years ago, the first millennium, where people were